All of these small groups have one need above all other, to show their work. So Samuel Rosenberg, who really is the principal force in Group A at the beginning in 1944, is quite a figure. He was very forceful, he was a great educator, he taught an enormous group of people, and although he was well known in New York and was showing in New York galleries and exhibitions, and was very popular in Pittsburgh, he really was enormously valuable as an educator. And he did these classes in the Jewish Center in the Hill District in Pittsburgh. And many, many people, particularly women, came to study with him. You grow to recognize his influence for a generation or two. In the formative years of Group A, they broke away from the Associated Artists of Pittsburgh because they felt that the type of abstract works that they were showing weren't really getting their fair share of the hang in the other organizations. And so that's really why Group A was formed, or the abstract group. And a variety of members joined. Some of them continued as members of the Associated Artists. They still do. But they find the ambience of Group A comfortable to their immediate needs.
When I joined, there was not only some of the most prolific artists, but some of the most engaging and also investigating artists. Group A came about because they thought Pittsburgh had sort of stayed in the formalists, or as say, not the abstract school. So anyhow, they thought they would be a little more adventurous and so forth. And many of these people were not only known in Pittsburgh, but known nationally, like Erna Gruber. She was in the Bertha Schaefer Gallery. There was Malcolm Green, and there was Marie Kelly, and all these people, Gloria Carn. There were all these people that Leonard Lee, Milton Weiss, Doug Pickering, who was the dean of sculpture at CMU, and Virgil Cantini, who was the head of Pitt's art department, and also one of the most prolific public artists in the country, and also showed in the internationals. And he and Pickering and Marie Kelly, they had individual shows at the Carnegie in those days.
So there have been a lot of people that I've met through Group A, and especially because I came into the group when I did not know a lot of people in Pittsburgh, in the Pittsburgh art scene. It really helped me establish some strong connections that I still have to this day. One of the artists that's been a really big sort of mentor and help for me is Rose Clancy. And I met her through, she and Jill knew each other, and that was how I sort of got introduced to Jill and Group A.
I like Group A because it has remained true to its original reason for coming into being. For one thing, I think it does very well at encouraging young artists and people who have thought of art simply as kind of a sideline, never really thought that they had a place in the art world, but it's open to anyone that's willing to come in and take the chances to discover more about themselves and about others who like to engage in creative activities.
And so this is some of the more recent work that I've been developing in the past year. This one particularly is called Streetscape in Purple. Again, very creative names. But for me, I was interested in trying to create something that was a little more approachable for people. This hangs on the wall. I custom built the shadow box to go along with it. All the components on the inside, which are the two-tone spray paint, again, using spray paint as my sort of main color sort of palette, is made from clay, fired to a bisque scenario, so it's a little bit harder than when it's just made, and then going through that same sort of automotive process to get it painted and to create this sort of like topographical map as if you're almost looking at buildings from street view, but you're seeing kind of all the different perspectives that you would have while also walking through an environment.
This piece is called Home for a Bunny. It's actually named after a children's book by Margaret Wise Brown. And I have done an awful lot of work with birds, but I wanted to kind of move into some new subject matter and started looking at rabbits. I'm kind of interested in how they have traditionally been symbols of growth and fertility and life and death. And I kind of thought that the image of baby bunnies in a nest was a very striking one, because rabbits are often they look so vulnerable, and people often find a nest of bunnies and assume that they've been abandoned by the mother. But usually what happens with rabbits is that the mother is out gathering food and the baby bunny's job is to stay where they are quietly and hidden. I was just sort of working with that image of vulnerability and wanted to build a much larger nest structure around it out of paper, which is a fairly delicate material, even the strong paper that I use for printmaking. So I wanted to play with those ideas of home and safety, and I did a little bit of what I did on the Kinglets engraving, where I embellished it with gold paint and a little bit of coloring to sort of bring a bit more visual dimension to the image.
My very first time out as exhibiting artist, I had a work accepted into the Associated Artists at Pittsburgh Annual at the Carnegie Museum, and I won an award. And I was painting at that time in gouache on illustration board or paper. I think you can see the influence of abstract expressionist color field painting, where the whole sense of the work is at how the colors and loosely defined free shapes relate to one another. And having had that success, it kind of confirmed the direction that I was going in, but it was a style that was very much influenced by Mark Rothko, for example.
I think since my involvement with Group A started, I see potentially Group A becoming not only a much more recognized art group here in Pittsburgh, but through the promotional work that we've started doing, having more exhibitions, having the 75th anniversary sort of coming up soon, the work that we've been doing on the website to try and create an internet presence beyond just social media is really going to help stimulate not just more people knowing what Group A is, but also stimulating the members of Group A to be more active, more involved, and want to submit more work.
It's a very, almost like a family. We all know one another, and we willingly jump in to do the things that need to be done as they are called for. And it just reminds me of what you learn about the early, say, the 19th century movements as modernism was coming into being, say, like the group in Paris at the turn of the century that created, the various series of movements like Cubism and constructivism and surrealism, and we don't get stuck on a particular style and think that everyone has to follow some sort of regimen. We don't publish any manifestos or things like that. It's just a very encouraging group, and the kind of group I think that every community that's interested in the arts needs to